What if the very thing you're chasing is running because you're chasing it? Have you ever noticed that the harder you try to make something happen, the further away it seems to get? Whether it's success, love, recognition, or peace of mind, when you push too hard, you often end up feeling more frustrated, more exhausted, and further from your goal than when you began. It's like trying to catch a butterfly by running at it full speed. The more you chase, the more it slips away. Now think about a magnet. When two magnets are pushed together with the wrong ends, they resist. No matter how much force you apply, they won't connect. But when you turn them the right way and stop forcing them, they snap together effortlessly. Life works in a similar way. The more pressure you put on a situation, the more resistance you often create. But when you take a step back, when you loosen your grip, that's when things begin to flow. Picture a plant in your garden. You water it, you care for it. But if you're constantly hovering over it, pulling at its leaves, checking every hour for growth, you might actually hinder it. Growth doesn't happen under pressure. It happens in stillness. It happens in trust. After we've given something the care and energy it needs, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is walk away and let it breathe. This isn't about giving up. It's about letting go of control, letting go of the need for certainty, letting go of the illusion that you can force your life into alignment by sheer effort alone. Because here's the truth. Life doesn't respond to desperation, it responds to clarity. And clarity comes when the noise of control quiets down. You may be thinking, but if I stop trying, won't everything fall apart? That's a fair question, but the reality is often the opposite. When you stop trying to micromanage every outcome, you create space for better things to arrive. Things you may not have seen when you were too focused on controlling the path. You give your energy room to breathe. You become receptive instead of reactive. And that shift changes everything. This is where the deeper power of surrender comes in. Not the passive kind, but the conscious, courageous kind. The kind where you still show up, still do your part, but release the anxiety around when, how, and whether something will happen. You begin to trust not just yourself, but the timing and intelligence of life itself. In a world obsessed with hustle and control, surrendering might feel like weakness. But I'll tell you this, it takes far more strength to let go than to cling. And it takes wisdom to know when to step back. Because sometimes stepping back isn't retreat. It's alignment. It's a return to flow. So if you feel like you've been chasing something that only seems to get further away, pause, breathe, ask yourself, what if it's not about chasing anymore? Because maybe, just maybe, the thing you want most isn't lost. It's just waiting for you to stop running so it can find you. Have you ever wanted something so badly that you couldn't think about anything else? Maybe it was a job, a relationship, a goal. You poured everything into it, your time, your energy, your thoughts, and yet the harder you tried, the more it seemed to slip through your fingers. Why does that happen? Why do our deepest desires sometimes drift further away the more we cling to them? The answer lies in a truth many of us overlook. The more you obsess over the outcome, the more resistance you create. And that resistance doesn't just block opportunities, it drains your energy, clouds your judgment, and pulls you out of the present moment. When you're consumed by results, you stop acting from clarity and start reacting from fear. You stop enjoying the process and start living in constant anxiety, measuring your worth against a finish line that keeps moving. This is where the wisdom of the Stoics becomes more relevant than ever. Epictetus once said, "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather wish that what happens happens as it should, and you will be happy." That's not just a quote, it's a way of living. When you let go of your need to control the outcome, you open yourself to a deeper kind of peace. You start to realize that the process, the effort, the intention, the growth is already enough. The outcome, that's just a bonus. Let me tell you a story. A friend of mine, let's call her Lily, was determined to reach a major career milestone. She worked relentlessly, constantly checking her progress, measuring her worth by what she hadn't yet achieved. And the more she tried to force things to happen, the more they stalled. She felt defeated, drained, stuck in a loop of frustration. Until one day, a mentor gave her a piece of advice she didn't expect. Stop chasing, just show up each day as the best version, wow yourself, and let the rest go. Lily didn't believe it at first, but she was too tired to keep pushing. So she tried it. She focused only on her actions, not the results. She let go of the pressure, and slowly something shifted. Without the weight of expectations, opportunities began to appear naturally. What once felt like an uphill battle began to feel like momentum. This isn't magic, it is mindset. When you detach from the outcome, you give yourself space to breathe. You stop acting from desperation and start acting from grounded purpose. You stop seeking perfection and start honoring progress. You stop living in the future and return to the only place where life actually happens. The present moment. So how do you begin? First, focus on your actions. Show up fully, give your best effort, and let that be enough. Second, let go of perfection. Progress matters more than polish. And third, practice presence. Don't live in the what ifs or the when will it happen. Live in the now, because when you do, you'll find something remarkable. The results you were chasing start to come to you, not through force, but through flow. Detaching from the outcome doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to stop poisoning the journey with pressure. It means trusting that what's meant for you will arrive, not when you force it, but when you're truly ready for it. And maybe, just maybe, that moment is closer than you think. They say your life is shaped by your thoughts. But how often do we actually stop to examine them? Most of us move through our days in a storm of noise. Deadlines, distractions, self-doubt, expectations. And without realizing it, that noise becomes our reality. We respond not to what's in front of us, but to the endless commentary inside our own heads. We react, we panic, we spiral when all along we had the power to choose a different way of seeing. Here's something the Stoics understood deeply. Your mind is not just a passenger in life, it's the driver. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." That's not just poetic, it's practical. Because when your thoughts are calm, focused, and grounded, you begin to see solutions instead of problems. You move with clarity instead of chaos. And that shift in perspective changes everything. Let me tell you about someone I know. We'll call her Rachel. For years, Rachel lived in a constant state of stress. Her mind was always racing, worrying about tomorrow, replaying yesterday, juggling 10 things at once. She thought this was normal, necessary even. But over time, that mental overload started to take its toll. She felt disconnected, reactive, and exhausted. Until one day she made a decision, not to change her how or her life or her goals, but to change how she thought. Rachel started small. Each morning before reaching for her phone, she paused. Just 5 minutes to breathe and observe her thoughts. Were they helpful or harmful? Were Were they focused or frantic? She didn't try to stop them. She just became aware, and that awareness gave her something she never had before. Choice, the choice to respond instead of react, to reframe her thinking. Instead of, "This is too much," she started asking, "What can I do right now?" Instead of spiraling into worst-case scenarios, she began focusing on what she could control: her attitude, her actions, and her mindset. Over time, Rachel didn't just feel better, she became better, more creative, more present, more resilient. The same challenges were still there, but her experience of them had changed completely. And that's the power of mastering your mindset. You may not be able to control everything around you, but you can always control how you see it. So how do you begin this shift? Start by becoming aware of your inner dialogue. What's the tone of your thoughts? Are they supporting you or sabotaging you? Just notice, without judgment. Next, practice reframing. Catch yourself in moments of doubt or fear and choose a different lens. Instead of, "This is impossible," try, "This is a challenge I'm ready to grow through." And finally, anchor yourself in the present. So much stress lives in the past or the future, but peace only lives in now. This work isn't easy. It takes patience. It takes practice, but it's also the most important work you can do because your mindset shapes your reality. And when you change the way you think, you change the way you live. You don't need a perfect life to feel at peace. You just need a mind that knows how to see clearly, and that clarity, it starts with you. We live in a world that tells us everything must happen now. Instant messages, same-day delivery, overnight success. We're conditioned to believe that if we're not moving fast, we're falling behind. But what if speed isn't the solution? What if your constant rush is the very thing keeping you from receiving what you're meant to have? The truth is, when we try to force life to happen on our schedule, we often end up creating more stress than progress. We miss the subtle lessons. We overlook the growth that only time can offer. And worst of all, we forget that some of the most meaningful things in life take time, not because they're out of reach, but because they're still being shaped. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly." And it's true. Whether it's building a career, healing from loss, finding your purpose, or simply becoming the person you were meant to be, none of it happens overnight. Greatness requires patience, timing, space to unfold. Let me share a story. A friend of mine, we'll call her Sophie, spent years chasing success with everything she had. She pushed herself harder and harder, convinced that if she just worked more, forced more, demanded more, it would finally happen. But no matter how hard she tried, the doors stayed closed. The opportunities didn't line up. And slowly, frustration turned into burnout. One day she decided to stop pushing, not because she gave up, but because she was tired of fighting life. She shifted her focus. Instead of obsessing over the end goal, she began investing in her growth. She read more, she rested, she sharpened her skills. She connected with people, not out of desperation, but out of curiosity and presence. And with time, things began to shift. The very opportunities she used to chase started to come to her, without force, without fear, just flow. Why? Because she was finally ready, not just ready to receive, but ready to hold what came her way. This is what trusting divine timing looks like. It's not about being passive or doing nothing. It's about doing your part and knowing when to let go. It's about understanding that the universe doesn't operate on your timeline. It moves according to growth, alignment, and readiness, not urgency. So how do you begin to trust the timing of your life? First, let go of the need to control. You can't rush what's meant to take time. Trying to manipulate timing will only leave you feeling anxious and disconnected. Second, focus on your growth. Keep becoming the kind of person who's ready to hold what you desire. Because if the right opportunity showed up today, would you truly be ready for it? And third, practice patience. Real patience isn't about waiting quietly. It's about staying present and grounded while life rearranges itself in your favor. The waiting season isn't wasted time. It's preparation. It's refinement. It's life clearing the path for what's to come. And sometimes the delay you're experiencing is actually protection, giving you space to become more so you can receive more. You don't need to rush. You need to trust. Trust that what's meant for you won't miss you. Trust that life isn't late, it's right on schedule. And trust that your job isn't to force anything, but to keep showing up with faith, with presence, and with a heart that's willing to grow while you wait. Because when the timing is right, everything will fall into place. Quietly, powerfully, and without effort. There's a certain kind of energy that pushes people away, even when you're trying your hardest to succeed. You may think you're being determined, ambitious, committed, but deep down, if your actions are driven by fear, scarcity, or the pressure to make it happen now, you're not acting with purpose. You're acting with desperation, and that difference is everything. Desperation has a smell to it. It's subtle but unmistakable. It shows up in rushed decisions, anxious emails, over-explaining, over-pursuing. People can feel it, even when you think you're hiding it. And the truth is, desperation repels the very things you're trying to attract. Opportunities, trust, connection. None of those thrive in frantic energy. Now compare that to someone who moves with quiet confidence, who knows what they want but isn't clinging to it, who takes consistent, steady steps rooted in clarity and belief. That's purpose, and it draws people in because it feels grounded, trustworthy, real. There's a Stoic idea I return to often. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." It sounds simple, but it's profound. For you act, get clear. Who are you becoming? What values do you want to live by? What energy do you want to bring into the room? Because when your actions come from that place, they carry a completely different weight. Let me share a story. I once knew a man named Jack. For years, he was stuck in a cycle of chasing, jobs, clients, opportunities. He networked like crazy, said yes to everything, stayed up late trying to prove himself, but nothing seemed to land. He was doing a lot, but none of it felt aligned. Eventually, he realized what was happening. He wasn't acting from purpose. He was scrambling, trying to escape the feeling of not being enough. When he hit burnout, he paused, and for the first time, he asked himself, what do I actually want, and who do I need to become to get there? That simple shift changed everything. Jack stopped trying to impress everyone. He started setting boundaries. He refined his goals based on what truly mattered to him, not what looked good on paper. And once he aligned his actions with his values, things began to flow. Not because he was working harder, but because he was working smarter, with purpose, not panic. So how do you shift from desperate action to intentional movement? First, get clear on who you are and where you're going, not in vague terms, but in specifics. What does success look like for you, not for your parents, your boss, or the algorithm? What do you value more, recognition or integrity? Speed or sustainability? Second, Take small, consistent steps that reflect those values. You don't have to rush. In fact, rushing often backfires. What matters is showing up with clarity and calm, even when you're still in progress. And finally, release the need to force everything. Trust that aligned action creates results. Not always immediately, but inevitably. When you move with intention, you attract with ease. Desperation says, I need this now or I'm not enough. Purpose says, I know who I am and I'm willing to grow into what's meant for me. So today ask yourself, am I acting from fear or from vision? From scarcity or from trust? Because when you act from purpose, the right people, the right moments, and the right success will always find you without you needing to chase them down. Control is an illusion we cling to, especially when life feels uncertain. We like to believe that if we plan hard enough, prepare long enough, or worry intensely enough, we can somehow bend the world to our will. But the truth is, no matter how much we try, there will always be things beyond our reach. Other people's choices, the economy, the weather, even the timing of our own success. And holding on too tightly to what we cannot control only leads to exhaustion. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, said it best. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life, and it is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. That one sentence carries a lifetime of wisdom, because when you stop trying to control what doesn't belong to you, other people's opinions, the future, the outcome, you finally free yourself to focus on what does. Your mindset, your choices, your responses. Let me tell you a story. Anna was someone I knew who used to worry about everything. She'd stay up late wondering what her boss thought of her, or what would happen to her finances next year, or whether she was making the right life choices. She believed that if she could just think hard enough, anticipate enough, plan thoroughly enough, she could avoid mistakes, pain, or failure. But instead of feeling secure, she felt trapped in her own mind. Always 10 steps ahead, but never at peace. One day after a particularly stressful week, she broke down. And in that moment, she realized something. The things she was trying to control were never hers to hold in the first place. So she made a quiet decision to let go, not of effort, but of overthinking, not of care, but of control. She began focusing only on what she could influence, her daily actions, her mindset, her energy. If a meeting went poorly, she reflected, instead of ruminating. If the future felt uncertain, she chose presence over panic. And slowly, things began to shift. Not because her life got easier, but because she stopped resisting what she couldn't change. When you let go of control, something beautiful happens. You start living from the inside out. You stop chasing certainty and start building resilience. You stop needing guarantees and start trusting your ability to respond, adapt, and grow, no matter what happens. So how can you start letting go in your own life? First, master your inner world. Begin by recognizing when you're trying to control the uncontrollable, like how someone feels about you, or when your next big break will arrive. Pause. Ask yourself, is this something I can truly influence? If the answer is no, release it. Second, welcome uncertainty. Life isn't meant to be figured out all at once. Some answers come only with time. Some clarity comes only through experience. The more you resist uncertainty, the more anxious you become. But when you embrace it, you create space for growth, surprise, and possibility. And third, trust the timing of life. Trust that what's meant for you won't miss you, that even detours carry direction. that setbacks aren't the opposite of progress. They're often part of it. Letting go of control doesn't mean you don't care. It means you finally understand what's yours to carry and what isn't. It means you stop wasting energy on what you can't change and start investing it in becoming the kind of person who can thrive in any storm. In a world obsessed with control, real power is choosing presence, choosing peace, choosing trust, not because everything is certain, but because you are becoming certain of yourself. There's a quiet power that comes from acting like you already have enough, not because you're pretending, but because deep down you realize that chasing from a place of lack only pushes what you want further away. It's a subtle shift, but it changes everything. Most of us are raised with the belief that we have to fight for more money, more success, more validation. The world tells us that the only way to be worthy is to keep striving. But here's the truth most people miss. When you act like something is missing, your energy reflects that. And people, opportunities, even your own creativity, respond to the energy you give off. Scarcity repels, abundance attracts. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." In other words, freedom and peace don't come from constantly accumulating more. They come from realizing that you already have what matters and acting from that place of inner fullness. Let me tell you about James. For years, James was chasing success. He was always working, always setting the next goal before the first was even finished. His mindset was, once I get there, I'll finally feel secure. Once I achieve that milestone, I'll finally be enough. But the more he achieved, the more restless he became. Nothing was ever quite enough. And one day, after a big win that left him feeling strangely empty, he paused. Instead of asking, "What's next?" and he asked something new. What do I already have that I've been overlooking? He started writing down 3 things he was grateful for each morning. He made time for his relationships. He noticed the skills, the experiences, the quiet wins he'd been dismissing. And slowly his energy shifted. He stopped chasing to fill a void and started living from a place of already being full. And here's the interesting part. When he let go of chasing, things started coming to him. Ideas flowed more freely. People reached out with unexpected opportunities. It wasn't magic, it was alignment. He was finally moving in harmony with his values, not in reaction to his fears. So how do you begin to embody the energy of abundance? First, practice gratitude, not as a routine, but as a daily grounding ritual. Take time to name what's already working, what's already present, what's already beautiful in your life. This isn't toxic positivity. It's training your mind to see what it often overlooks. Second, let go of attachment to the outcome. That doesn't mean you stop dreaming or setting goals. It means you release the pressure for life to unfold in a specific way. You trust that what's meant for you will come because you're already aligned with it. And third, act as if it's already yours. Carry yourself with the confidence of someone who already belongs. Speak, walk, and show up like the version of yourself who knows they have value right now, not someday. Abundance isn't about how much you have. It's about how deeply you trust that you already have enough to start. And when you live from that truth, you become magnetic. Because people are drawn to energy that feels whole, calm, and rooted, not needy or frantic. So the next time you find yourself chasing from a place of fear or lack, pause. Remind yourself, you don't need to become someone else to be worthy of more. You just need to remember who you already are and show up from that place. Live as if you already have it, because that's often how it finds you. There's a fine line in between taking action and trying to force life into submission. Most of us are taught that if we want something badly enough, we have to work harder, push more, hustle longer. And yes, effort matters, but effort alone isn't the secret. In fact, the more we try to force outcomes, the more we unknowingly push them away. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, once said, "Effort and patience will achieve more than force and anxiety." That's not just a quote, it's a shift in how we move through the world. Because real progress doesn't come from frantic effort. It comes from alignment, knowing what you value, taking clear steps in that direction, and then letting go. Let me tell you about Grace. For a long time, Grace believed that if she wasn't constantly grinding, she wasn't doing enough. She poured herself into her work, her goals, her to-do lists, trying to force things to happen on her timeline. But the harder she pushed, the more stuck she felt. Deadlines kept slipping. Progress felt shallow. Her mind was exhausted, but her heart was still empty. Then something changed. One day, after yet another sleepless night worrying about results, she asked herself a simple question. What if I'm not giving the wrong effort? What if I'm giving the right effort in the wrong way? That moment of honesty led her to shift everything. She stopped trying to control every outcome and started focusing on what was truly in her hands, her integrity, her daily actions, her mindset. Grace began showing up differently. She made decisions based on alignment, not anxiety. She pursued what felt meaningful, not just urgent, and she learned to let go of the need for instant results. Slowly, things began to change. Not because she worked less, but because her energy was no longer clouded by desperation. Her actions had clarity. Her goals had patience. And as she let go, the results finally started to show up. Naturally, sustainably. This is the quiet power of aligned action. When you take steps rooted in who you are and what you believe, you create momentum that doesn't need to be forced. So how do you practice this in your own life? Start by focusing only on what you can control. Your thoughts, your effort, your values. You can't control how fast something happens, but you can control how you show up for it. You can't predict outcomes, but you can commit to a process you believe in. Next, be patient with the process. Patience isn't passive, it's powerful. It means trusting that the seeds you've planted are growing, even if you can't see them yet. It means not digging them up every day to check. Growth has its own rhythm, and if you try to rush it, you often delay it. And finally, release the expectation that everything must happen on your timeline. Life doesn't run on your schedule. It unfolds when alignment meets readiness. When you stop clinging to results, you make space for them to come in ways you didn't expect. This isn't about giving up control, it's about giving up the illusion of control. You still act, you still show up, but you do it with trust, not tension, because in the end, it's not just what you do, it's how you do it. Aligned action is steady, it's centered, it doesn't beg or chase, it invites. So today, ask yourself, are you moving from alignment or from anxiety? Are you trusting the process or fighting the pace? Because when you take the right action and then let go, that's when life begins to meet you halfway. Quietly, clearly, and always right on time. At some point in life, we all chase. We chase success, we chase love, we chase clarity. And often we believe that the more we push, the faster it will all come together. But there comes a time when you realize what you're chasing isn't running away, It's simply waiting for you to slow down and realign. You don't attract what you want by demanding it from the world. You attract it by becoming the kind of person who naturally lives in harmony with it. When you start honoring your values, your truth, and your peace, not as an afterthought, but as a foundation, something powerful begins to shift. Life stops feeling like a struggle. It starts to feel like flow. There's something liberating about knowing you don't have to control everything. You don't have to prove yourself through exhaustion. You don't have to force timing or outcomes. What's meant for you doesn't need to be chased. It needs to be received. And that receiving happens when your actions come from a place of calm clarity, not fear or pressure. Imagine living from a space where your energy is steady, your decisions are grounded, and your efforts are no longer tied to desperation. You do what's right because it aligns with who you are, not because you're terrified of missing out. That's not giving up. That's growing up. It's stepping into a wiser way of being. One where you're no longer hustling for your worth, but honoring it from the start. Let me ask you this. What would your life feel like if you stopped chasing what you think you need and started building a life around who you already are? What kind of peace would that unlock? What kind of opportunities might show up? Not because you demanded them, but because you became ready to hold them. When you trust the process, you stop rushing the outcome. You start showing up fully for what's in front of you today. And often that's exactly when the results start to show up too. Not because you forced them, but because you stopped blocking them with tension, fear, and impatience. So here's the truth I've come to learn and keep learning. The more you try to control the river, the more it resists you. But when you trust the current, when you learn to float instead of fight, it will carry you exactly where you need to go. Not always where you expected, but always where you're meant to be. And if this message resonated with you, take a moment to breathe it in. Sit with it. Let it settle. And if you feel it brought you even one step closer to clarity or calm, I invite you to support the channel. Like the video, leave a comment with the words "Thank God," and subscribe if you haven't already. That small act helps us continue sharing more thoughtful, grounded, and soul-nourishing content like this. And it lets us know this message found a home in you. Because at the end of the day, your journey is unfolding, not in chaos, but in rhythm. And when you begin to trust the rhythm, everything changes.